He's told the Iranian people, I think you should overthrow the institutions, which means the regime, and help is on its way. The last bit, well, that's what we don't know. What does that mean? So he's got a menu, and it does appear he's about to choose from it.
Tim Marshall, the foreign affairs specialist, the author of the book Prisoners of Geography, now joins us. Hi to you, Tim.
Hello, John.
Welcome. What did you make, Tim, of that posting by President Trump just a very short while ago on Truth Social? Keep protesting, take over your institutions, help is on the way.
It's eyebrow raising. And I think that the take over your institutions is very much as important as help is on its way. And of course, the two things go together. I think following the crackdown that's come, which is the regime following a very well-trod pattern, which is that you blame foreign agents, you say it's all a scheme to do down the great state of Iran, you get your own supporters out on the streets, and then you start killing the opposition. And when you do it in such large numbers, you can't stop killing them until they give in. And I think we may have been at that point where it might begin to fizzle out. I mean, can you imagine how brave you have to be to demonstrate?
Yeah.
And so at this moment, what comes in to change things? And that's the American president basically saying regime change.
Yes.
Which he has not said before. He's cancelled all his meetings. Steve Witkoff was going to be having meetings with some Iranian diplomats and foreign minister, I think. He's cancelled those. He's currently or about to meet with military advisors who are going to give him the options. He's told the Iranian people, I think you should overthrow the institutions, which means the regime, and help is on its way. The last bit, well, that's what we don't know. What does that mean? There are options, of course.
Yes, I mean, enormous question mark. Although having said that, Tim, help is on its way when combined with an incitement to Iranian protesters to take to the streets and brave the guns of the security forces who have killed thousands already. What does that mean if it doesn't mean an attack and maybe an imminent one?
Well, we're also into the realm of the law of unintended consequences, because once you unleash military power, it's difficult sometimes to see. Sometimes it's pretty obvious what will happen, but other times it's not. And I think this is one of the latter. He's got three options. He's already used one, and that was the financial option. Extra sanctions and sanctions on countries that do 25% extra tariffs on countries that do business with Iran. Although I think we need to see a bit more detail on that, because it's a bit odd that you would suddenly put 25% sanctions on China. Leave that where it is. Second, cyber. If they have a crippling cyber attack, that can be construed as, yep, I did what I said I was going to do. I said I was going to help you. I've helped you. But then the third option, of course, is kinetic military. Now, for days now, the American military will have had punched into its computers all the coordinates of all the Revolutionary Guard headquarters, munitions. They'll have had the headquarters of the Basij militias, the depots where they keep their motorcycles, because a lot of the motorcycles are used to break up the demonstrations, any special police units that they think have been particularly responsible for the hundreds of deaths. All that will be punched in. You also have the option of going after the nuclear facilities again, like they did last year, and you even have the option of hitting the oil fields. So he's got a menu, and it does appear he's about to choose from it.
Yes, I mean that extraordinary posting, Tim, and as we know, the word extraordinary has become overused of late, but still, it was an extraordinary posting. And it does mean, doesn't it, that the President of the United States has, in a very direct way, assumed direct responsibility for what follows, if only from that incitement to take to the streets. If they follow that advice to the extent they're able to hear what he says and act on it, it means deaths. It will mean more deaths on top of the so many deaths. And this time, the responsibility goes straight to the door of the White House.
Well, we've been here before, quite a long time ago, 91 in Iraq, when basically the Bush senior administration encouraged the Shia to rise up against what was essentially a Sunni-led regime of Saddam Hussein. And Saddam Hussein then massacred tens of thousands of them, and the Americans didn't step in. Nor did they step in. Well, they did step in for the Kurds, but only in a limited way
Yes.
in the north. So, yeah, it's happened before. And generation later, I remember Colin Powell, Secretary of State, former general, saying, "You break it, you own it." Well, that would be partially what applies to Mr. Trump.
Yes.
If he encourages it and thousands upon thousands are slaughtered, and as I said, once you've started killing people in those numbers, you can't stop. Because if you stop and they're still going, you're going to die. You know, they're too far in now.
Yes.
So they have to keep going until either they're overthrown or they kill so many that they crush it. But in the event that it is overthrown, at that point, what are you going to do, United States of America, having encouraged them and then sent help, allegedly, in the aftermath? Now, I think the idea of Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi flying in and taking control is difficult. I don't see how the Revolutionary Guard would give up all their business interests. You have already got the Kurds, Iranian Kurds, some of them would want a separatist movement to get going. The Baluchis in Baluchistan, part of Iran, they would have the same. The Azeris are not too happy about being controlled by the Farsi-speaking Persians in Tehran. I could go on with other groups. So they better know what they're doing, and they better already have a plan for the day after,
Yes.
if they do, in fact, do a day.
Well, indeed. I mean, and you would have to say, confidence in the existence of a plan for the day after, let alone a plan for the day after, which anyone can be confident of working, cannot be great. And now, what about the view, in as far as you can help us with this, what will the Arab states, for example, be thinking of this? I've just been reading about the foreign minister of Oman, who's been playing this role of intermediary, talking to Iran, contacting the other interested states. What will the Arab states be thinking now?
Oman is, if you want to look at it in Cold War terms, it's the Austria of the situation. That they, just as Austria and Vienna in particular was this sort of like hinge where everybody could meet and all the spies used to be, and that's where all the intermediary things went on. Oman has played that role between Iran and the Arab countries for many, many years, very successfully. And one of their senior guys flew into Tehran, I think, recently to try to broker this. And I think that's why Witkoff, the Americans and the Iranians were actually beginning to fumble their way towards their meetings. But that now appears to be on ice. So, sorry, to answer your question, although the Omanis have tried, and it looks at the moment have failed, the Arab countries would be in two minds about it. They would, at one stretch, welcome the destruction of a regime which has spent the last almost half decade interfering throughout the Middle East, notably in Syria and in Iran and in Iraq and in Lebanon, using their proxies to sow terror throughout the Middle East. But at the same time, they do not want to completely destabilize Iran, nor for the Shia minorities in throughout the Middle East, which are mostly Sunni led countries, to be inflamed by what may or may not happen in Iran. So it's a very, very delicate, I've gone through the various scenarios of military takeovers, the king allegedly coming, the crown prince coming back, the minorities seizing an opportunity. There are so many variables, and well, help is on the way apparently, but there is tonight a clear call to overthrow the regime.
Fascinating. As always, Tim, to get your analysis. This is such a chilling picture. Tim Marshall, thank you again so much. Now, we can get now the thoughts of Vice Admiral US Navy Kevin Donegan, who served as commander of the Navy's 5th Fleet and was commander of the 32-nation Combined Maritime Force in the Middle East. Admiral, welcome to you.
Thanks, John. It's great to be here.
It's good to have you here, Admiral. When you saw that Truth Social post from the president, help is on its way, urging Iranian protesters to take to the streets, to take over institutions, what went through your mind, Admiral?
Well, I think what went through my mind was the same as what is going through everyone's mind. What does that mean? What's the next step that we expect the president, this administration in the United States to take? in support of those protesters, because that comment was preceded by, we're here to support the protesters, and we're going to protect you, if you recall.
Indeed, I was just discussing there with our colleague Tim Marshall to call on the Iranians to take to the streets and then take over, or if you like, attack Iranian institutions, combined with the is it a reassurance? Help is on the way. What can that mean if it doesn't mean a military attack, and conceivably an imminent military attack?
Yeah, well, certainly, I think we all know that the president has taken a briefing here today, and it's not just the only briefing he's had related to options that he has, but clearly he's looking at a range of options, not one thing to do.
Yeah.
And that range of options could be not just military actions, as you've heard. From the military side, we've seen and probably understand the capabilities that the U.S. has in a situation like this, right? There's targeted airstrikes they can do on leadership, and we heard about that. Basij is part of that, the IRGC. And it can be their infrastructure, anyone that supports them, as we just heard, and you just went through in great detail.
Yes.
But in addition to that, that would be paired, I would think, or the discussions or options would be to pair that with cyber warfare. As the U.S. and others have a history of cyber warfare in Iran, so we probably have options that we can take, along with psychological operations. So if you think about the cyber warfare from the standpoint of trying to sow confusion and disrupt the security decision making of
Yes.
the Iranian leaderships, and the same thing with the information or psychological campaigns, it would be do the same thing. But at the same time, we'd be trying to get truth out to the Iranian people,
Yes.
and give them an availability to continue to convene. We wouldn't want this to trickle out, so to speak.
No, clearly, and it's now, if you like, official, that the White House is in favour, wants to see regime change in Tehran. That is now beyond question. But when you hear or read the president on Truth Social telling Iranians already at great risk, facing enormous danger, thousands of Iranians have been killed by the security forces of Iran, to attack and take over institutions, well, then you're encouraging much greater risk, much greater exposure to the danger of being killed by those Iranian forces. Now, would it not be just logical and necessary, if you're going to urge that kind of action on Iranians, to have a plan which would tip the regime out quickly? Otherwise, the danger which you're inviting Iranians to face now, in even greater measure, and it was dangerous already, that danger surely couldn't be contemplated going on for very much longer, because it would mean an enormous increase in the numbers killed. Is that not just logical?
I think that's very logical, and you even heard the president also say or tweet that that he's not doing no more talks until they stop killing protesters. So that really aligns with what you're saying. But the real question is, let's say that the United States takes these range of options we discussed, and you can add to that oil blockade, you can add to that the tariffs, you can add to that the continued pressure on sanctions, you can add to that the UN stating today how horrible this is. What's the outcome that we can expect? Well, I think the one that we would hope for is that in some way internally, the supreme leader has to step down, or himself is killed,
Yeah.
and that leaves a gap in leadership. And so, what is the outcome that happens from that? Does that new leadership then temper their attacks against protesters? The logic would say that would be the intent of what we're trying to achieve, right? To get that attacks on the protesters to stop, and then would they then also start to line up more in terms of a nuclear agreement and an agreement not to do malign activities in the region that this administration also wants.
Yeah.
And I think they're all tied together, John, going forward. The question is, we can't, and Tim said it rightly, no one's going to be able to accurately tell you now exactly the result of the actions, that range of options, and how they're going to play out.
No.
Because although the president can decide what to do, in the end, it's going to be the Iranians and what they decide to do, and what their leadership that is either there or the one that remains, doesn't really matter, what they decide to do going forward. The great hope is they take that path towards stopping what they're doing to the protesters and trying to assimilate more into the normal rules of order and getting their sanctions relieved. So there is a path forward. The question is, will they take it? If we were to take actions, will they take it? Or will a deal come that gets to that same outcome? Those would be what we want to have.
Okay, and lastly, and very briefly, if I may, and I'm grateful, as I say, to you for joining me. I've been reading in the U.S. media that the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, the heads of the U.S. military, have wanted time to prepare for a U.S. military attack and the necessary preparations to guard U.S. bases and installations in the region against Iranian retaliation. I mean, do you assume that those preparations are now there, that the bases and installations are as guarded and protected as they can be?
Well, if I was sitting in my previous role, of course, we would have been reading the tea leaves and be ahead of that process, so to speak, in terms of protecting our forces. In terms of time to arrange for forces to be able to carry out these actions, you saw actually the U.S. has put some forces in the region because you just saw they were used against ISIS in Syria. So we have forces in the region, but we also have the capability to reach long range with our other capabilities. And so it's not necessary to drive all the aircraft carriers there, so to speak, and to put the Army on ships and drive them there to do the range of options that the president's probably considering in this case.
All right, Admiral Kevin Donegan, I'm grateful to you. So thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, thanks a lot, John. I enjoyed it.